And as a final point, I also want to mention something about technologies that are making it harder for all of us to focus, regardless of whether or not we have pre-existing ADHD or not. You can probably guess where this is going. Everybody nowadays seems to have a smartphone. I'm sure there are a few individuals out there that don't have a smartphone. Nonetheless, most people have them. Most kids want one as soon as they can get them. And they are small. They grab our attention entirely. But within that small box of attention, there are millions of attentional windows scrolling by, right? So just because it's one device that we look at does not mean that we are focused. We are focused on our phone, but because of the way in which context switches up so fast within the phone, it's thought that the brain is struggling now to leave that rapid turnover of context, right? Many shows, many Instagram pages, many Twitter feeds, many websites. Basically, the whole world, at least in virtual format, is available within that small box. Unlike any other technology humans have ever dealt with before, even though there are trillions, infinite number of bits of information in the actual physical world, your attentional window, that aperture of constriction and dilating that visual window, is the way in which you cope with all that overwhelming information typically. Well, within the phone, your visual aperture is set to a given width. It's about this big. Typically, the phones seem to be getting bigger, but nonetheless, it's about that big. And within there, your attentional window is grabbing a near infinite number of bits of information, colors, movies. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, a movie is worth 1 billion pictures. The brain loves visual motion. And so the question is, does that sort of interaction on a regular basis lead to deficits in the types of attention that we need in order to perform well in work and school relationships, etc.? And the short answer is yes, it does appear so. We are inducing a sort of ADHD. And while the studies on this are ongoing, because prominent use of smartphones really took off right around 2010, and we're only in 2021, long-standing studies take time, which is essentially to say the same thing as long-standing. There are some studies, and one in particular that I'd like to highlight. One was actually carried out pretty early in 2014. This is a study that explored smartphone use. At the time, they called it mobile phone use, but smartphone use and inattention, difficulties in attending in 7,102 adolescents. So this is a huge study, a population-based cross-sectional study. And you will be probably surprised and somewhat dismayed to hear that in order to avoid this decrease in attentional capacity, adolescents needed to use their smartphone for less than 60 minutes per day in order to stay focused and centered on their other tasks. Otherwise, they started to really run into significant issues. So 60 minutes is not much. I have a feeling that most young people are using their phone more than 60 minutes per day. I know I am. I think for adults, the number is probably higher, meaning if you're an adult, I'm going to just extrapolate from what I read in this study. It seems that probably 2 hours a day on the phone would be the upper limit beyond which you would probably experience pretty severe attentional deficits. I'm a big fan of Cal Newport, who wrote the book Deep Work. He's also written the excellent book A World Without Email. I've never met him, but I'm a huge admirer of his work, and I will paraphrase something that he said far more eloquently than I ever could, which is that the brain does not do well with constant context switching, meaning it can do it, but it diminishes our capacity to do meaningful work of any other kind. And so Cal, as I understand, is very he's a computer science professor at Georgetown, by the way, is very structured and very disciplined in his avoidance of cell phone use. I think we're all striving to do that. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I think whether or not you have ADHD or not, if you're an adolescent, limiting your smartphone use to 60 minutes per day or less, and if you're an adult, to 2 hours per day or less, is going to be among the very best ways to maintain your ability to focus at whatever level you can now. And as I always say, most of the things that we get recognized for in life, success in life, in every endeavor, whether or not it's school, relationships, sport, creative works of any kind, are always proportional to the amount of focus that we can bring that activity. It is important to rest, of course, to get proper sleep, but I stand behind that statement. And I leave you with that study about attention and cell phones and how cell phones are indeed eroding our attentional capacities.